Good morning. So I am just back from Hawaii with my kids. I took my 17-year-old and my 21-year-old on a trip last week so that we could spend some good, solid, quality present time together. And it was a really big deal for us to do this because, one, it had been a really long time since we'd done this. Like, besides from the pandemic and everything happening in our lives, it had been a long time. And two, because historically, I have found family vacations incredibly stressful. So much so that I would often come back from a family vacation feeling exhausted and needing a little bit of a vacation to recover from my vacation. For me, it was the logistics, the planning, the making sure everyone was safe on vacation, making sure everyone had fun, making sure we had great excursions planned so no one got bored, making sure that everybody stayed off of their phones. I have teenagers, good luck. And so what would happen is I'd get so attached to what it was supposed to look like and what family time and self-care on this trip and real connection was going to look like that I would so be in my head that the trip was fun, but the way I was thinking about it was actually creating more stress, which would actually create my exhaustion. And so for this trip, I decided to be extra intentional about it. And I set one intention before I left, and the intention was to be incredibly present and responsible for the experience I was going to create with my kids. That was it. That was my main intention, just to be incredibly present and responsible for my own experience. And we had a great trip. It was probably the most meaningful week we've spent together. The phones were out, sun's out, guns out, phones out the whole time. But it was one of those trips where we learned more about each other in a week than we probably had in the last 10 years. And I think a lot of that was because I was able just to kind of let go of all my expectations. And I think it's really funny how we do this. I think it's funny how we look at doing self-care, we look at taking time off, or we look at connecting, or we look at creating impact. And we set up all these rules in our heads about what it's going to look like. And if it's not congruent, and if we're not present for it, we actually can end up creating the exact opposite experience of what we're going for. Isn't it funny how we do that? And what if the way we think about self-care and connection and impact is actually the thing that leads us towards burnout? Like, what if our thinking about it is what's getting in our way? So my exploration of this topic started when I was very young, actually as a 14-year-old little girl working at Baskin-Robbins, scooping world-class chocolate. And at the time, my family and I had just gone through a really terrible divorce. My dad was gone, our extended family was gone, our church was gone, and it was my mom and 4 little girls figuring out how to navigate this new world. And I was the oldest of these 4 little girls. And I remember feeling devastated, sad, confused, very much alone, angry, very angry, and also very responsible. Because I had my little sisters I was really worried about, and I had my mom who I was really worried about, who I knew was going through her own process through all this. So one of the things I did is I went and I got a special worker's permit to work at Baskin-Robbins a couple days a week to help cover some of the expenses, my little Baskin-Robbins paycheck, to help cover some of the expenses. And I would love to tell you guys that I was this really great sport about it. I had a great attitude and I was just sunshine the whole time, but actually I was really ticked off the whole time. And one day in particular, I remember feeling especially doomy, like my life was doomed. And this gentleman came in and he ordered a double scoop of world-class chocolate in a cup with a sugar cone on top. Okay, so I opened the little freezer door, I got my scooper, I leaned in, I scooped the perfect little scoop because I was a very good scooper. I worked very hard at my scooping. And I put that scoop in the cup, grumpy, still grumpy. And as I went to get the second scoop, I had this thought/feeling occur to me, which was, Anese, what if what's happening right now in your life is not happening to you? What if in some weird way it's actually happening for you? And Anese, what if you could actually turn this? Like, what if this is going to make you really smart and you're going to kind of become really powerful in your life and you're going to actually create something cool out of this? Like, what if you could actually create a really cool life? And what if you could actually be happy? And what if you could actually be happy right now? And by the time I finished that second scoop and put it in, I brought the ice cream out, I put the sugar cone on top, I put that cute little pink spoon in, I handed the ice cream to this gentleman, and little did he know that the little 14-year-old girl that went in to get his ice cream and the girl that came out was different. Because in that icebox, I had made the decision to be happy. He gave me a $5 tip, which at that time was huge. I considered this an angel wink and figured I was onto something really important and went off for the rest of my life until today, and until my dying day, I'm sure, really exploring these questions of how do we create more impact? How do we create genuinely healthy, sustainable, authentic relationships? And how do we actually take care of ourselves in order to do this? How do we actually do that? So I went on, I studied kinesiology, I studied leadership, I studied culture, I studied systems, I studied all the things you could study that had anything to do with performance, impact, or well-being. I was there. And I created a company around these questions. I wrote books around these questions. And I created an entire methodology to really help people start to look at how could they create more impact in their life, more authentic connection, and do so all without burning themselves out. And the methodology is called the IEP Method. IEP stands for our intentional energetic presence, which is all about the intentions we bring to our life and to each other. It's about the energy and the stamina that we have to actually do what we're here to do. And it's about our presence, how present we are with ourselves, how present we are with each other, and how present we are to what's actually happening. Now, in this work, it's a very robust body of work that's been in development for many, many years. But in this work, one of the core components is this idea of self-care. So when people come to do this leadership methodology, they get all excited because they're going to get all these leadership skills. And we'll give them their leadership skills. But they're often really surprised to find that the place we first want to start is looking at their self-care. We'll ask them, what are you doing to take care of yourself, to nourish your own self so that you can lead and create the impact you want to create? And they'll instantly start to name things like, well, I go mountain biking once a week, or I run every day, or I eat great, or I make sure I get my sleep, or I meditate, or I use essential oils, like whatever it might be for them. And all of these things are really important, so if you're doing these things, please keep doing them. But what I notice is that the things that they're talking about are all external. They're things that are happening outside of themselves. They're things that what I have now started to call whack-a-mole self-care. Whack-a-mole. So for example, we go on vacation, but we come back from vacation to our lives and to ourselves, and we're exhausted 2 days later. Whack-a-mole. We go take that afternoon off to be with our kids, but we come back to a punitive amount of work and emails and stuff going on. Whack-a-mole. We're running, we're eating great, we're doing all these things, yet we're still feeling tired. It's whack-a-mole. So we have to be addressing self-care at a much deeper level. In this work, there's a framework that we use. It's called the IEP Leadership Trifecta. And see if you can see yourself in any of these. We notice that there's 3 leaders that come to the work, 3 types. One is the leader who has tremendous impact. They're doing great work, they're credentialed, they're making great money for the company, they're a high performer, they're a total rock star. However, they're absolutely exhausted. Their relationships may be compromised, their health may be falling apart, they're probably heading towards burnout. Okay, so they got the impact down, however, they don't have the self-care piece down. Then there's a leader who's got the self-care piece down, rarer, but they do exist. Works 9 to 5, chakras are all in alignment, eats whole foods every day, goes for their daily run. They're phenomenal. They're taking great care of themselves. Energy is totally humming. However, they have a really hard time creating impact. Also not sustainable. So then there's the third kind of leader. This leader has the impact down. They've got the self-care down. However, they do it in a way that leaves people behind, that makes them feel unseen, unvalued, unheard. These are the leaders that people are following because they have to, not because they want to. And these are often the leaders that are burning everybody else out. So they've got self-care and impact, but they don't have people down. All right, so what we found is that we need to have all 3 of these. All three of these are essential. And this doesn't mean they're perfectly balanced. It means that we're in awareness and in relationship with ourselves about these. What I notice with purpose-driven, mission-focused, servant-oriented leaders is that most often they've got impact down and they've got people down pretty great. But the self-care is often the thing that gets put on the back burner. I don't have time for it. My life's really busy. I've got my family. I've got my business. I've got my people. I'll schedule self-care 3 weeks from today at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. But what we've learned is that if the self-care is not being handled, there's no way we can have the optimal amount of impact in our lives and in our businesses or on our people that we're meant to. That's best case. We're not optimized. Worst case, we're actually doing more harm than good. So we have to do more. And when we ask people where they think they're going to be working on their leadership skills, ultimately 9 out of 10 say it's going to be an impact in people. What we invite them to is to really look at this idea that your self-care is a leadership skill. Your self-care is a leadership skill. I actually believe that this is the most important leadership skill we have. Because if we're not well, if we're not resourced to do our work, if we're not here, we can't lead. When we're in a place of self-care, we actually are able to access better creativity, better decision-making. We can be more intentional about how we want to show up. We can be more patient and more present with our people. So we have to do this. But before you guys think I'm going to send you off to do like mountain biking and pickleball and all the things with self-care and take on a whole new routine, I'm going to offer you a different kind of self-care that is free. It will not take you any extra time. It is available to you right in this very second. Nobody can give it to you, and nobody can give it away, or nobody can take it away. And that kind of self-care is what I call self-partnership. Self-partnership is simply about being so present with ourselves and listening to ourselves and pausing to hear ourselves. Listening to the intuition, being kind to ourselves, and really noticing what we actually need. This is about not abandoning ourselves. This is about really staying with ourselves so we can move forward and create the impact we want to have, but also make sure we're handled as well. Now, over 20 years, I've distilled self-partnership down to what I call the 4 Ps of partnership, okay? And I know you guys have the Evergreen 7 Ps, and beautifully, there's some nice alignment here, so you're already ahead of the game. These 4 Ps of partnership, to me, are the antidote to burnout. Self-care, taking days off, sabbaticals even, are not the antidote to burnout. Being connected to these 4 Ps, this is where we address burnout proactively. So the first P is connection to purpose and principles. You guys have got this down pat. You're doing this. This is being connected to why we do what we do, what we're in service of, what's important about it, as well as how we do it, and being in alignment with those core values. When we do that, we build a congruent energy about us, which to me becomes like an energetic force field, so that no matter what's happening, Ryan spoke about this earlier, we're grounded and rooted in us. So first set of Ps. Second set of Ps, presence and the pause. This one's big. This one is about being fully present with ourselves, fully present with our people, and fully present to what's happening in our lives. It's also about giving ourselves full permission to pause, to shift gears, to reevaluate the vacation we want to have, and if it's actually the one we want, to really look at where we need to reboot to bring our energy back up. This piece right here, presence in the pause, this would be one, after spending a couple days with you guys, this would be one I would want you to double down on. And you're not alone. This is a human being thing. The third P is people, which again, in Tugboat, you guys are all about the people. So you guys are rocking this one. But I want to add 2 pieces about this. One is being connected to the people we serve and why we serve them. So that's the heart. The other one is remembering that we've got people around us to support us that can hold space for us. And this last P, and this is the one that's got the most attention for me right now at this point of where we are in the pandemic, another P, which is this full permission for pleasure and pain. meaning that we allow ourselves full permission to have our pleasure, to play, to actually enjoy and celebrate when things are going really well for us, even though they might not be going really well for everyone around us. Like to really honor this place of pleasure and allow ourselves that full joy, but also to give ourselves full permission for pain, to talk about the hard stuff, to say when we need help, to give our authentic emotions, to stop when we're grieving, and to not ride over this, and to be that strong, powerful leader that's got to be responsible for everybody else. So we need all four of these. When we have all four of these, again, there comes that congruent energy that no matter what's happening and how overwhelming things may be, we can anchor here, and from a place of self-partnership, we've got ourselves. So we can trust ourselves. What I love about these 4 Ps is you can really overlay them with your team, and you can apply these to your company, and you can look at how are we doing with all these Ps, so that individually people are responsible for looking at these, or responsible / invited, right, to look at these Ps. But also as a team, you make these Ps just a part of your culture. My team and I got to really experience the power of self-partnership in these 4 Ps throughout the pandemic, and especially in the first couple months. So right before the pandemic, I had just released my second book. It was called Contagious You. Okay, 2 months before Contagious COVID came out, all right? Contagious You was the follow-on to Contagious Culture. I had invested 3 times the amount of energy. The book was an extra 100 pages. Like, I had put my heart and my soul into this. We had planned our entire 2020 around this book and having it serve and create impact in the world. And of course, 2 months later, nobody wanted to be called contagious, right? Nobody wanted to be called contagious. So this took a minute. You know, besides the grief of the pandemic and the disappointment of the book and figuring out what we were going to do now, we had just had all of our 2020 plans go off. And I had my team, and I had my kids. So I spent a lot of time like this, on the floor, alternating between this position and the fetal position, rocking back and forth for the first couple months, trying to figure out what I was going to do, or what we were going to do. And one day in particular, I remember laying there rethinking the work. Did the work still work? Was IEP now a luxury? Do we need to do something harder? You know, the way I titled books, did I need a little bit of help on that for the future books? I really looked at how we were going to stick together as a company. I thought about, did we need to completely reboot and do something different? Did I need to go get a different job? Like, I really had a lot of those questions. And I remember that same voice, that same questions coming to me. Anese, what if what's happening is not happening to you, but it's happening for you? And to Ryan's point, from you, okay? Anese, what if this is actually an opportunity to serve at a much deeper level? What would that look like? And Anese, if you were in self-partnership right now, what would that actually look like? Who could you become if you were really in a state of self-partnership? And I got up from the floor, and I sent a note to my team, and we met the next morning. And the next morning, I said to my team, all right, we're starting fresh, like completely fresh. And I had 3 requests of them. 1, I wanted them to double down on their IEP. So you guys have been swimming in this. Now we're going to double down on this like no time before. And doing this doubling down on IEP, we're going to double down on the Ps, and we're going to make them really explicit as a team as we go through this together. 2, I want you to think about how you want to be of service to the company now and where you think you could be most helpful. And I want you to think about how we can be of more service to our customers now. And 3, I want you to really think about who you want to become during this time. Who's the leader you want to become now? And what we have to do to take care of yourself to become that person. And we got to work. We got to work. And 2 years later, after many, many experiments, including everything from doing free book clubs for people that had bought the book and we didn't do the events for, doing free book clubs to a pandemic plan 100, which was how to get through the pandemic. It was a pay what you can. Some people paid $5. Like whatever you could do, we created an IEP program to help you move through the pandemic and ask yourself those questions. To taking all of our training online, to creating a train the trainer to help companies access this differently. After about 18 experiments of doing it, we came out the other side and had completely rebuilt, taken everything apart and put it back together again. And I am so grateful for my team. And I'm so grateful for those conversations, because we kept those conversations, especially full permission for pleasure and pain and the pause, we kept those so well alive. Today, we not only have stayed together as a team, but we actually have tripled in our size as a team. And we've taken this work to a place now where I can scale it in a way that I didn't think was possible before the pandemic. And I know that this wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you if I hadn't listened to myself and gotten off that floor and really been in a place of self-partnership for the last couple of years. I know that that little girl in the icebox, that little 14-year-old, had she not listened to that intuition, that divine messaging, that inner, like whatever it was, had I not listened to myself and gotten into self-partnership, I don't know what would have happened to her. I think she'd be fine, I don't know, but I'm really grateful that she paid attention. The through line for my life and what I see for our clients and my friends and the people I care the most about is that the more we show up for ourselves, the more we partner with ourselves, the more we take care of ourselves, the more we listen to ourselves, the more we can show up for others. The more we can give, the more we can create impact, the more solid of a container we can hold for the people that we're here to lead. I hold this actually as a leadership responsibility. It's really an opportunity and an invitation, but I believe that we're in this really exciting moment in time where we get to create impact at a whole new level and decide who we want to really become as leaders. And when we do this, and we're explicit about it, and we talk to our teams about it, we take the burden of self-care just being on the individual in your company to actually being on all of us as a collective shared mission. And that is a kind of contagious impact, not my next book, but that is a kind of contagious that we can definitely get behind. So my prayer for everyone in you, all of you, is that you take whatever resonates from this, and that you look at how doubling down on self-partnership in different ways, perhaps from the way you were thinking about this an hour ago, that you take this and you use it to go and create even more beautiful impact in the world. Thank you so much.